All throughout history, we've had these two schools of thoughts going at each other every single era. Marxism versus capitalism. Marxism is the number one enemy of an entrepreneur because they believe in big government. They believe that no one should be rewarded even though they can bring more value to whichever company or whichever arts. Capitalism rewards the entrepreneur. If you're outstanding and you bring a lot of value, while through division of labor or any sorts, then you can make a lot of money. And this is where Peter Paul Rubens, who was a famous painter in the late 1600s, early 1500s, he took this division of labor and he made a lot of profit in there. What he would do is that he had a big workshop and he was a famous painter already. He would sketch his paintings and then he would give these sketches to his students, and then his students would paint most of the painting, and then he would just finish it. He would retouch the eye or he would do the face, and then they would sell a lot of copies. Well, on the other hand, if you didn't believe in division of labor and you were a famous artist in that era, you would paint only your paintings, but then you would only do a few, therefore your profit would be few. But if you had the division of labor, you would multiply your paintings while still have a lot of profit. Now throughout the 1700s and the 1800s and part of the 1900s, there was something called patron, which basically if you were an artist, you were sponsored by this patron. The pros of having a patron was that financially you were secured. You didn't have to worry about getting paid or if your paintings would sell or your music would sell. That was the pros. The cons would be that you basically had to please your patron. If your patron wanted this type of painting, you had to do what he wanted. Or the music that he wanted. If he wanted something that was very dark, then you could only do dark music. If he wanted only sonatas, then that's the only thing that you would produce. So there were pros and cons to it. But with the introduction of the free market, artists like Beethoven and Mozart, who were composers, they had a few squalls and a few fights with their publishers, which in today's world are called managers, because they would link these artists with their respective audiences, and these artists would benefit from writing under commercial pressure because they had to please the audiences, and this would push them to write great works of art. So this is a great example why these artists like Beethoven and Mozart are still popular today, because of the free market. Now, in the 19th century, the film industry was born. Before the movies, Shakespeare plays were the thing. That's what you attended when you wanted to be entertained. Now, critics didn't like the movie industry first because this new type of art didn't have that one author, that one poet, that one solitary creative genius who would produce the work. So they thought that if a group of people were involved, or a studio or corporation, that meant that it was very inauthentic and these elements wouldn't produce a very pure work of art for the purists. And this was a myth that was believed when the motion pictures were born. Again, that's a Marxism school of thought that one person should have all the power or most of the power. The first example they would use would be Citizen Kane, which came out in 1939 by Orson Welles. He produced it, he directed it, and he starred in it. And today we can think about Bradley Cooper, who wrote the screenplay, who directed, and who starred in The Star is Born, and it was very successful. And this is good, this is great, but when there's collaboration, when there's different writers, different producers, this can only enrich the final product. For example, we have George Lucas when he produced A New Hope, the first Star Wars film, was a big hit and it was brilliant. Now for the second film, Empire Strikes Back, there was another director called Irvin Kershner, And this movie was regarded as one of the best science fiction films of all time. It became an instant classic. In the movie making, you may do it alone, but when you involve other people, when you rely on a big studio, you need a big corporation to fund you and then to market your film. The more people are involved, the better it is for you, at least in the film industry. When you study history, you can clearly see that the arts, whether it be music, poetry, or video games, the Marxist and the capitalist way of thinking has been influenced by these arts tremendously. Marxism says, you do your own thing, no matter what the people say. If people like it, and it becomes commercial, then maybe it wasn't really art. Capitalism says, you have a great product, collaborate to make it better. Are people going to buy it? Launch it as soon as possible. I think it's clear which school of thought truly support the arts.